Montana Territory, 1882, the train hissed its final breath as it slowed into the dusty edge of Dry Creek, and Adeline Sawyer pressed her gloved hands tight in her lap, heart pounding like a freight hammer in her chest. He was not here. She scanned the platform again, eyes darting past a man rolling barrels, a woman clutching a crying child, and a pair of ranch hands arguing over a broken boot. But none of them were the man whose letters she had folded into a ribbon-bound bundle and carried in the inside pocket of her traveling cloak. No Luther Dalton, no tall rancher with sunburned skin and a quiet way of speaking. No one who looked like the man she had agreed to marry. Adeline stepped down from the train, boots crunching against the gravel, the weight of her trunk yanking at her arm. The station agent gave her a polite nod, but no one offered help, no one called her name. Had she been fooled, the thought hit hard. She had sold everything: her mother's brooch, her father's old tools, just to buy the ticket out west. She had answered Luther's advertisement for a wife with cautious hope. His letters had been short but kind. He had spoken of needing a good woman to help raise his young twins after his wife died 2 winters ago. He had spoken of honest work, of a quiet home nestled beneath the crazy mountains, of a future. Now the mountains loomed in the distance, cold and blue, and Adeline stood alone. She waited until the sun dipped low. Each hour that passed scraped another layer of hope from her heart. Finally, with no money left and no one coming, she sat on her trunk and let her pride break just enough to cry. "You, Adeline Sawyer," the voice came low, steady, and rough from disuse. She blinked through tears to see a man standing beside her, tall and broad-shouldered, with a hat pulled low and a worn brown coat dusted in trail dirt. His boots were scuffed, spurs dulled, and he held a slouch in his left leg like he favored it. "Yes," she said, rising. "You are Luther Dalton," he said. "I am sorry I am late." Adeline stood frozen. He looked nothing like the shy, neat script in the letters. He looked tired, weathered, and older than she thought. "I waited hours," she said, not bothering to hide the edge in her voice. "I know. My boy broke his arm this morning, thrown off a mule. Doc had to set it. I could not leave until he quieted." Her anger faltered. "Your son," he nodded. "Luke. His sister Lillian stayed behind to help the cook. They are 8. You really have children?" Was there doubt about that? "I had doubt about everything by the time the sun hit that fence post," she said, pointing to the white rail behind him. "I thought maybe there was no ranch, no children, no Luther Dalton. Just someone fooling a lonely woman." He looked at her then, not just at her face, but into her, like he was weighing her words against something inside himself. "I do not fool people, Miss Sawyer." She blinked at the use of her last name. "Are you still expecting me to marry you?" "I do not expect anything after today," he said. "But I do have 2 children, and they need someone kind, and I need help. If you came all this way, I figure you were hoping to belong somewhere. I cannot promise much, but I can offer a place." "And honesty?" Adeline stared at the man in front of her. He was not charming. He was not handsome in the way girls in Boston whispered about, but his voice had steadiness. His eyes were clear, and he had come, even if late. "I will come with you," she said. "But I am not promising anything either." He gave a slow nod. "That is fair." They rode in silence for the first hour, the wagon creaking over the open land. The sun had dipped, casting gold over the grassy hills, and the wind smelled like pine and horses. Adeline sat stiff, her hands clasped in her lap, watching the horizon darken. "You ever been west before?" he asked. "No, this is farther than I ever thought I would go." "You nervous?" "I was. I think I am past that now." He glanced at her. "Why did you answer the ad?" She thought about lying. About saying something polite, but something about the way he asked made her answer plain. "I was tired of waiting for someone to choose me, so I chose something for once." Luther's hands tightened on the reins. He said nothing, but he did not look away. They reached the ranch past dark. A quiet house with smoke curling from the chimney, a barn to the left, and a corral holding 2 horses and a stubborn-looking mule. A girl with dark braids ran out onto the porch, barefoot and grinning. "Papa, did she come?" "She did," he said, climbing down. "Lillian, this is Miss Adeline." The girl's smile widened. "You are pretty," Adeline nearly laughed. "Thank you, she is tired," Luther said. Let us show her to the guest room, not wife's room, not yet. Inside, the house was warm, simple, and clean. A fire snapped in the hearth. Lillian showed her to a small room with a quilted bed and a wash basin. "You will like it here," the girl whispered before skipping away. Adeline stood alone, suitcase at her feet, the quiet pressing in around her. She had not been fooled, but she was not safe yet either. She was in a strange home with a man she did not know and two children who expected something of her. And still, as she lay down that night, her hand resting over her coat pocket where the letters still sat, she felt something unexpected begin to stir, not fear, not regret. But the first flicker of something steady, like maybe Luther Dalton, for all his silences and rough edges, might be worth leaning into. The rooster's crow came sharp and early, filtered through the thin glass of the window. Adeline sat up, the quilt slipping off her shoulders. Her body ached from the train, the wagon, the weight of a day spent holding herself together. But the house was quiet, and the smell of coffee drifted faint from the kitchen. She dressed with care, brushing her hair into a low twist and fastening the last button of her wool dress with fingers that trembled only once. She had not come to be idle. In the hallway, her steps were soft on the worn pine boards. She found Lillian crouched near the stove, feeding kindling into a fire already burning steady. "Morning," the girl said. "Morning," Adeline replied, crouching to help. "Where's your brother?" "Still sleeping." "He whined about the splint last night, but Papa read to him and he quieted." Adeline paused. "What did he read?" "Something about a girl who finds a cabin in the woods. There was a bear. I didn't like the bear part." "Neither would I." Lillian handed her a strip of cloth. "Do you know how to make biscuits?" "I do." "Good. Cook says he'll be late. One of the cows is calving." Adeline tied the apron around her waist. The girl moved with a sharpness that came from learning early how to help. There was no hesitation in her steps, no fuss in her tone. It struck Adeline harder than she expected. They worked in quiet rhythm, flour and lard and salt. When the sun crested the ridge beyond the barn, Luther came in, his coat damp at the shoulders and his hat in his hands. "Morning," he said, setting the hat on a peg. "Heifer's halfway through." "I'll go back once she finishes." Adeline wiped her hands on the apron. "Do you need anything taken out to the barn?" He looked at her a moment longer than necessary, not rudely, just measuring. "I could use the tin of carbolic and some clean rags. They're in the washroom." "On the shelf. I'll find them." She moved past him, catching the scent of soil and wind in his coat, the faint iron tang of blood clinging to his cuffs. He didn't speak again until she returned with the supplies and handed them over. "Thank you. You're welcome." He lingered another beat. "If you're comfortable, I'll leave you to the house. Lillian knows the rules." "Of course," Adeline said. He left without ceremony. The door clicked shut behind him. Lillian pulled 2 cups from the shelf. "You want coffee?" "Yes, please." They sat at the table, steam curling between them. Outside, wind stirred the trees. The house creaked now and then, but it was the sound of a place lived in, not neglected. "I don't remember my real mama," Lillian said, unprompted. "She died when we were little. Luke says he does, but I don't think he does, really. He just likes to say it." Adeline held her cup with both hands. "That must have been very hard." "It was worse for Papa. He stopped talking much after." Adeline didn't answer. She didn't know how to, not with a child watching her so openly. "But he's better now," Lillian added. "He reads more. Laughs sometimes." "Do you think he wants someone here?" "I think he needs it," the girl said, "far too old for 8. But I don't think he knows how to ask." By noon, Luke was awake. His arm was braced in a makeshift sling, and his face was pale but dry-eyed. "Papa says it'll take weeks," he told her while she helped him tie his boots one-handed. "But I'll ride again before snow." "You should listen to the doctor, not your wants," Adeline said gently. He scowled, but it lacked heat. "I didn't cry." "I believe you. I don't like crying. Sometimes it helps." He studied her like he couldn't decide if she was foolish or brave. "You're different than I thought." "I expect I am." Outside, she gathered laundry from the line while the children played a slow game of checkers on the porch. The sun warmed the back of her neck. She worked in silence, aware of the house behind her, the mountains beyond it, and the man somewhere in the pasture helping a cow into the world. By mid-afternoon, Luther returned. his shirt damp and his face drawn. "She made it," he said as he passed her on the porch. "Barely." Adeline followed him inside, offered a basin and a towel. He washed his hands at the sink, slow and deliberate. "You did well," she said. "She was young, first calf. Sometimes they die for nothing. You stayed." "I always stay." She handed him a clean cloth. Their hands touched, just briefly. It wasn't a spark, it was steadier than that. "I'll make something hearty for supper," she said. He nodded. "You don't owe us anything." "I know," she said. "But I'm here." Later, when the meal was over and the children were tucked in, Adeline stepped out into the night. The stars were sharp above the barn, the kind of sky that made a person feel small but not forgotten. Luther joined her after a while, standing a little apart, his boots just outside the pool of lamplight. "I'm not good at talking," he said. "You've said more than enough." He was quiet then, his eyes on the hills. "I didn't answer those letters lightly," he said. "I just didn't know what you'd be like once you were here." "What do you think now?" He looked at her fully then. The quiet between them was no longer empty. "I think I'll be grateful if you stay." She didn't smile. She only nodded, the wind tugging faint at her skirt. "I think I might," she said, "if you keep showing me who you are." The next morning came with mist low on the fields and a hush over the house that felt almost reverent. Adeline stood at the edge of the porch, her shawl drawn close, watching the pale light stretch across the grass. The air smelled faintly of damp earth and wood smoke, and somewhere behind her, a floorboard creaked. Luther stepped out carrying a bridle over one shoulder, his sleeves rolled and collar unbuttoned at the throat. He paused when he saw her, not startled, just thoughtful. "I was going to check the east fence," he said. "One of the steers broke through last week. Thought I'd see if he made a habit of it. Will you be gone long? A few hours. Depends what I find." She turned toward him, careful to meet his gaze. "If you'd rather I stay out of the way today, I understand." "I'd rather you come," he said, "if you're willing." They rode out just after sunrise, Luther on his sorrel gelding, Adeline atop a smaller mare he said had once belonged to his sister. The saddle creaked under her, but the horse moved steady and the rhythm settled something inside her. They traveled mostly in silence, save for the wind through the cottonwoods and the occasional call of a hawk overhead. The farther they rode from the house, the more the land opened soft hills rolling into each other like folded quilts, the grass brushed with silver in the morning light. "You said you had a sister," Adeline said when they paused to rest the horses. "Ruth." "She married a cattle buyer down near Miles City. They get through once or twice a year. Do you write?" "Not often. She's not much for letters, more for showing up unannounced with pies and opinions." Adeline smiled. "Sounds like someone worth knowing." "She'd like you," he said, eyes on the horizon. "She'd want to know what you're made of, but she'd like you." They reached the fence mid-morning. 2 posts had split near the base, likely from frost swelling the ground. Luther dismounted and knelt beside the damage, pulling a length of baling wire from his satchel. "Hold that post steady," he said. Adeline stepped down and braced the wood with her shoulder as he wound the wire tight. His hand brushed hers once in the motion, firm and calloused, and though neither of them looked up at the touch, something passed between them quiet and sure. When the work was done, they sat beneath a juniper to share the cornbread and dried apples Adeline had packed. Luther poured coffee from a tin flask, handing her the cup first. "I wasn't sure what kind of woman would come out here," he said, not looking at her. "Some days I still ain't sure what kind of man I am." She took a sip, the coffee strong and bitter. "What do you mean?" "After Sarah died, I stopped making plans. Just got through the days, wrote that advertisement because I didn't know what else might keep the children from growing up hollow around me." "They're not hollow," she said. "They're bright, capable, they are. That's their mother in them, and maybe a little of what I've managed not to ruin." Adeline set the cup down. She didn't reach for his hand, didn't need to. Her words were steady enough. "You're not ruining anything. You're raising them with care. That's more than most children get." He turned to her then, not with softness, but with a kind of recognition. "You didn't come here to be rescued, did you?" "No," she said. "I came because I was tired of being invisible." He nodded once. "I see you." Something shifted in the air between them, not sudden, but sure. Like two puzzle pieces finally pressing flush after being tried too many wrong ways. Back at the ranch, the sun had climbed high and the yard rang with the sounds of children at play. Lillian ran to meet them, cheeks flushed. Luke sat near the porch, carving a piece of soft pine with his good hand. "Papa," Lillian shouted. "The calf stood up on her own, I saw her," Luther said. "She's strong." Adeline helped the mare to the trough, running her hand along the animal's neck. When she turned, she found Luther still watching her, not like a man weighing outcomes, but like someone settling into something long overdue. That night after supper, as the sky turned violet, Luther knocked lightly on the frame of the open kitchen door. "I'll be out in the shed," he said. "If you need anything." She dried her hands on a towel. "I won't need anything," he hesitated. "Even so." She stepped closer, just enough to catch the outline of him in the fading light. "Before I came," she said, "I thought I'd have to fight to make a place here." "But it doesn't feel like a fight." "It shouldn't," he said. "You belong here as much as I do, maybe more," she nodded. "I'll see you in the morning." He touched the brim of his hat and stepped back into the dark. And though nothing had been declared, nothing promised outright, Adeline felt it settle deep in her bones. She was no longer a guest. She had begun to belong. By the third week, the rhythm between them had quieted into something dependable. Luther rose before dawn, worked the east pasture or repaired what winter had worn down. Adeline kept the house in order, taught Lillian her letters, and helped Luke practice tying knots one-handed until the splint could come off. No one spoke of what might come next, but the shape of it was there, pressed into each day like a thumbprint in bread dough. One morning, after a night of steady rain, Luther returned from the hay barn with his coat soaked through and an edge of worry on his face. "Flood took part of the north fence," he said, hanging his hat. "Cattle found the gap. I need to ride out and turn them before they cross into Jenkins's land. Will you take someone with you?" He shook his head. "Charlie's laid up with fever." "It'll be me and the dog." Adeline folded the dishcloth slowly. "I could go or stay here with the children if you'd rather." He hesitated, fingers still on the collar of his coat. "If I don't make it back by dark, there's a key under the floorboard by the hearth, for the rifle." "You know how to use it?" "I do," she said without pause. He nodded once, nothing more, and left. The day dragged long and wet. Luke thumped through the kitchen with his sling, restless and muttering about the calf he'd left unnamed. Lillian kept to the sewing basket, threading buttons onto a strip of muslin with quiet concentration. Adeline baked cornbread, then stew, then stood by the window as the sky turned slate gray and the wind picked up again. By mid-afternoon, she'd finally coaxed Luke into resting and sent Lillian to check the henhouse. She stepped out onto the porch, wrapped in Luther's spare coat, and watched the horizon for any sign of movement. The rain had stopped, but the air still held the scent of wet cedar and churned earth. When the rider appeared, it was near dusk. Luther's silhouette leaned heavy in the saddle, and the dog loped behind the horse, slick with mud. Adeline moved fast, grabbing a dry blanket and stepping off the porch before he could dismount. "How many got through?" she asked, taking the reins. "Only 4, he said. "Found them near the ravine, took most of the day, but they're back in the lower pasture. You're bleeding." He looked down, as if only just noticing the tear across his thigh. "Barbed wire, shallow. Come inside, sit." He didn't argue. She helped him to the kitchen, where he dropped into a chair, water pooling at his boots. She cleaned the wound with carbolic and stitched it tight while he sat still, eyes on the grain of the table. When she tied off the thread, he finally spoke. "You didn't have to wait on the porch." "I wasn't waiting," she said. "I was watching." He looked up at that, something tired and open in his expression. "You always say what you mean, when there's no use in pretending otherwise." His hand came to rest on the edge of the table, rough and idle. She didn't reach for it, but she didn't step away either. "I've been thinking," he said. "It's not a thing I do quick, but I've been thinking hard." She let the silence stretch, waiting. "We made an agreement back when you got off that train. That we'd see how it went." "We did." "I've seen." Her breath caught, but she didn't speak. "You've kept this place standing," he said. "Not just the house, the whole shape of it. The children sleep easier, I sleep easier. You're not a man who needs help." "I didn't think I was," he said. "But I see now I want it." Adeline folded the bloodied cloth, setting it aside. "What are you asking?" "I'm asking if you'll stay as more than a guest. As mine." She studied his face, the way his jaw tightened slightly, the way his eyes didn't flinch. "And if I say yes, then I'll take your hand and build whatever you want from the ground up." She let the weight of it sit there between them. Then she took his hand, palm to palm, not tentative, not testing. "I already did say yes," she said. "The moment I chose not to leave." Luther's mouth turned, not quite to a smile, but something fuller. He stood slowly, favoring the stitched leg, and drew her in with an arm around her back, firm and sure. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. The room held enough of them already. Outside, the wind settled and the dog circled once before curling beneath the porch. The house breathed around them wood, warmth, and something just beginning to root. Late May brought a softness to the land that had been missing since Adeline first stepped off the train. Cottonwood leaves fluttered pale green against a sky washed clean by spring storms. The snow on the distant mountains had pulled back, revealing dark ridgelines that caught the sunrise like old secrets. The ranch moved quieter now, steadier, not without work, but with a rhythm that felt lived in. Adeline stood under the lean-to behind the house, sleeves rolled, stirring lye soap in a wide copper kettle. The air held the scent of ash and rendered fat sharp but honest. Lillian sat nearby, mending a hem with her tongue caught between her teeth, humming a tune Adeline didn't recognize. "You always hum when you sew?" Adeline asked without looking up. Lillian nodded. "It keeps my fingers from rushing." "Does it work?" "Only when I remember the words." Luke came around the corner just then, his sling long gone, a battered straw hat askew on his head and a coil of rope in his hand. "Papa says the roof on the chicken shed's near caved in. Wants me to help him brace it." "Then keep your weight on the center beam and mind your footing," Adeline said. "No heroics." "I ain't stupid," he muttered, but there was no sting in it. Just the pride of a boy trusted with real work. He jogged off, boots thudding light across the packed earth. Lillian set her sewing down and watched him go. "He's been different since you came." Adeline didn't answer right away. The soap thickened and she stirred slow, careful not to splash. "You've both grown," she said finally. "That's nothing to do with me." Lillian tilted her head. "He listens now. And Papa talks more, even when he's tired." Adeline lifted the paddle, letting the soap drip back into the kettle. "Maybe we're all learning each other." That evening, after supper, Luther brought out a small cedar box and set it on the table. The children had gone to bed early, worn out from the day's chores and sun. The lamp burned low, casting long shadows across the plank floor. "I built this for Sarah when we were first married," he said, lifting the lid. Inside were a few folded papers, a length of baby ribbon, and a photograph faded from years near the hearth. Never added to it after she passed, didn't feel right. Adeline watched his hands, broad and steady, as he closed the box again. "I want you to have it." She didn't reach for it. "It's not mine." "It is now, if you'll marry me proper." She met his eyes. "You already asked," he nodded. "But I didn't do it right. Not with a ring, not in front of the children. I wanted to be honest. Not just a decision we made because we were both tired of being alone." Adeline stood and crossed to the cabinet, pulling down a crock of flour. She reached inside and brought out a small tin where she'd hidden a plain gold band she'd brought west, tucked among her mother's thimble and a single cuff button from her father's Sunday shirt. "I brought this for luck," she said. "Didn't think I'd wear it." He took it from her fingers, turned it once in his palm, then slipped it gently onto her hand. "Then let's call it luck and something more." They married beneath the cottonwoods 3 days later. Lillian braided wildflowers into Adeline's hair, and Luke stood straight beside his father, boots buffed and clean. The preacher rode in from town, dusty and smiling, and read the words slow and firm. After the vows, Luther didn't kiss her in front of everyone. He only rested his forehead against hers and whispered, "You're home now." The guests stayed for stew and cornbread, and Ruth arrived horseback just before dusk, her laughter ringing louder than the barn swallows. She embraced Adeline like she'd known her for years and declared the couple a rare kind of fit, quiet where it mattered, stubborn where it counted. That night, with the house still and the fire low, Adeline sat at the edge of their bed, unpinning her hair. Luther leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her as if he hadn't had time to look closely before. "I didn't think I'd love again," he said. She turned, her eyes clear. "I didn't think I'd be seen." He stepped forward and knelt before her, resting his hands on her knees. "Did I miss anything important? You'll know if you did," she said softly, pressing her forehead to his. "And you'll learn." The days that followed spun out gentle and full. The roof was repaired before the next rain. The calf-born week in early spring found strength enough to kick clean over the gate and had to be moved to the far pen. Adeline cleared a patch of earth behind the house and planted beans, then wild strawberries, then lavender. Luther built her a bench from old oak planks, and she sat there in the evenings, sewing while he read to the children by lamplight. One morning in June, Ruth stood at the edge of the porch, arms folded, watching Adeline knead bread. "You've settled in," she said. "He's not easy." "You know that, I do. But he's true," Ruth said. "Always has been." Adeline washed her hands and dried them on her apron. "I don't want ease, I want honest. You've got it." Years passed, but the house never quieted, not from hardship, but from life. The children grew tall on chores and laughter, and the rooms filled with the scent of cooking, of books, of wet coats hung to dry. Adeline and Luther grew into each other the way roots grow into soil, slow, soundless, and deep. They never spoke in declarations. They didn't need to. Their love lived in what they built together, a home that never asked a soul to be more than they were, a place where grief was remembered but didn't anchor them, a future shaped not from luck alone, but from choice. And when the snow came each winter, laying clean over the fields, they sat close by the fire, her hand always in his, steady as the land that held them.